I woke up on Thanksgiving to an empty house. My whole family left for a luxury trip without me. I woke up at 9 on Thanksgiving morning to complete silence. That was the first sign something was wrong. Our house was never quiet on Thanksgiving. Never. By now, the kitchen should have been alive with the smell of roasting turkey. My mom moving between the stove and counter with that focused energy she gets on holidays. My dad should have been camped out in front of the TV with the Macy's parade blaring too loud. My siblings should have been fighting over the bathroom or arguing about who gets to set the table. But there was nothing. Just the faint hum of the heating system kicking on. I sat up slowly, brushing the hair out of my face, listening harder. No cabinet doors slamming, no running water, no footsteps creaking across the floorboards upstairs, just emptiness. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding strange in the stillness. No answer. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. No messages, no missed calls, nothing that explained why the house felt so wrong. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, suddenly wide awake. The floor was cold under my bare feet as I stepped into the hallway. Mom? Dad? I walked to my siblings' rooms. Both doors were open. The beds were empty, not slept in. They looked almost staged, like someone had smoothed the covers and walked away hours ago. Downstairs, the kitchen was spotless. No turkey on the counter. No ingredients lined up for stuffing. No cranberry sauce bubbling on the stove. Just my coffee mug from last night, sitting alone in the sink. I stared at it for a moment, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I moved to the front window and pulled back the curtain. The driveway was empty. Every car was gone. My parents' sedan, my brother Corbin's beat-up Jeep, even the 7-seater SUV I'd filled with gas yesterday for our planned drive to Uncle Dean's house. A ridiculous thought crossed my mind. Maybe they'd run out for cranberries or something last minute. But the house didn't feel like they'd just stepped out. It felt abandoned, cold, like no one had been here in days. I grabbed my phone again and scrolled to my mom's contact. It was gone. I blinked, confused, and kept scrolling. My dad's number, gone. Corbin, Sloan, even my youngest brother Rhett, all deleted. "What the hell?" I whispered, my heart starting to race. Then I remembered. Last night, Rhett had borrowed my phone. "Hey sis, can I check the score real quick? My phone's dead." He's 19 and still forgets to charge his phone like it's a personality trait. I'd handed it over without thinking twice. Clever, but not clever enough. Rhett isn't exactly a criminal mastermind. He deleted the contacts but didn't block the numbers. I still had my call history, and I knew most of their numbers by heart anyway, especially Uncle Dean's. I dialed it with shaking fingers, pacing the empty kitchen as it rang. "Hello?" His voice was relaxed, almost cheerful. "Uncle Dean, it's Krista. Where is everyone?" There was a pause, a long one. "Krista, oh, you're still home?" Something in his tone made my stomach drop. And then I heard it in the background, the rhythmic crash of waves against a shore, distant, unmistakable, and the soft strumming of a ukulele. "Where are you?" I asked, though I already knew the answer wasn't his house in New England with the big dining room table we were supposed to gather around today. "Ah." His voice dropped, awkward now. "Well, your parents wanted a big surprise for their 30th anniversary. They all flew to Maui last night." I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning white. "All of them." "They figured you were busy with work," he continued, clearly uncomfortable now. And, well, they didn't want you to worry about the expense. The expense! The expense for a vacation they were taking with money I'd been pouring into this house for 6 years. Before I could respond, I heard a voice in the background. Sloane's voice. God, are you talking to her? I thought the plan was to just let her stay home. Uncle Dean made a shushing sound, but it was too late. I'd heard enough. Krista, I ended the call. I stood there in the silent kitchen, my phone still clutched in my hand. This wasn't some last-minute thing. This wasn't a prank. This was planned, orchestrated. They'd deleted my contacts. They'd snuck out in the middle of the night. They'd left me behind, deliberately. My gaze drifted to the calendar on the fridge, where I'd circled today's date in red marker and written, Thanksgiving at Uncle Dean's, in my neat handwriting. Next to it was the checklist I'd made. Clean guest bathroom, gas-up SUV, pick-up wine, all checked off. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate, calculated exclusion. They wanted a luxury vacation on money I'd been contributing. And they didn't want me there. I waited for the tears to come, for the crushing weight of betrayal to drop me to my knees. But it didn't happen. Instead, something strange washed over me, a cold, crystalline clarity. Every moment of the last 6 years snapped into perfect focus. Every check I'd written, every bill I'd paid, every sacrifice I'd made while my siblings took and took and took. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just stood in the silent kitchen of a house that had never really been mine, feeling something final click into place inside me. I was done. The phone went dead in my hand, Uncle Dean's voice and Sloane's careless complaint fading into nothing. But their words kept echoing, bouncing around in my skull like bullets ricocheting off steel. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, staring at my coffee mug from last night still sitting in the sink. The only proof anyone actually lived here at all. 6 years. The number materialized in my mind with perfect, brutal clarity. I was 20 when I moved back home after community college. My dad had just been demoted. Temporarily difficult, my mom had said, eyes wide with that practiced worry she wore so well. They just needed help until they got back on their feet. That's what she told me. That's what I believed. 6 years later, my dad's job still barely covered the car insurance and his hobbies. His fishing trips, his golf outings, his collection of vintage model cars gathering dust in glass cases in the basement. The mortgage was $2,800 a month. My contribution? $2,000. Theirs? $800. I pulled out my phone, opened the calculator app, and typed in the numbers with slow, deliberate precision. 2,000 times 72 months. $144,000. Gone, not invested, not saved, not even appreciated. Just gone. Meanwhile, Corbin, 28 years old and supposedly the entrepreneur of the family, had been living here rent-free since his $50,000 startup crashed and burned 2 years ago. $50,000 my parents had somehow found for him, even while I was writing checks for new gutters and property taxes. And Sloane, 22 and attending Riverdale Private College, $38,000 a year in tuition alone, plus sorority dues, all paid without question. Your sister needs to focus on her studies, my mom had explained when I asked why Sloane couldn't work part-time like I had. The responsible one. That's what they called me. Family code for ATM. The numbness from the phone call started to fade, replaced by something colder, quieter. Not anger. Anger would have been too hot, too messy. This was something else. something final. I stood up and walked to my home office. The smallest bedroom in the house, the one with the water stain on the ceiling that no one else wanted. I pulled open the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet and extracted a 3-inch binder. Its weight was substantial in my hands. 6 years of receipts, 6 years of bank statements, 6 years of warranties for appliances and electronics I'd purchased when the old ones broke down. 6 years of evidence. I carried the binder to the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I didn't book a flight to Maui. I didn't compose an angry email. I didn't even check social media to see if they'd posted sunny beach photos yet. I Googled local moving companies, immediate availability. Several options appeared, but most were closed for the holiday weekend. One company, though, advertised premium holiday emergency service. Their rates were double the normal price. I dialed the number without hesitation. Reliable movers, this is Troy. Hi, Troy. I need to move out of my current residence tomorrow morning. Is that possible? He sounded surprised, but professional. Yes, ma'am. But I should warn you, our holiday rates are... That's fine, I cut in. I'll need a truck large enough for several major appliances and furniture pieces. We can handle that. 8 a.m. work for you? Perfect. I hung up and looked around the kitchen. The high-end front-loading washer and dryer I'd bought last year after Sloan complained the old ones were gross. The 4-door smart fridge I'd purchased when the original died during a heat wave. The $900 espresso machine Corbin and Sloan used every morning without ever buying a single bag of coffee. All in my name. All paid for with my money. They wanted to talk about expenses? Let's talk about expenses. I opened my laptop again and searched for studio apartments within 30 minutes of my office. Most weren't available until next week, but I found one complex offering immediate move-in for an additional fee. I made the call, put down the deposit, and scheduled the lease signing for tomorrow afternoon. Next, I created a detailed inventory of everything I'd purchased for this house. The 80-inch 4K TV in the living room, my $2,500 bonus from last year, the high-speed Wi-Fi router and mesh system, the new dishwasher. Item by item, I cataloged what was mine. Not in anger, not in vengeance, in simple, cold accounting. 7 days. They'd be gone for 7 days. When they returned, expecting the comfort they'd always taken for granted, expecting me to have maintained their lives in their absence, they'd find something very different waiting for them. I ran my fingers over the binder, feeling the plastic cover cool and smooth beneath my touch. 6 years of being the responsible one. 6 years of being the invisible foundation everyone stood on, but no one saw. I closed the binder. I'd been responsible long enough. The moving truck arrived at 8 the next morning. I stood in the driveway, my 3-inch binder tucked under my arm like a shield, watching 3 men in matching blue uniforms climb out. Premium holiday relocations cost me triple the normal rate, worth every penny. Miss Kessler. The foreman approached, clipboard in hand. We're ready when you are. I nodded, opening my binder to the section marked Purchases. Let's start in the living room. Inside, I pointed to the 80-inch 4K TV mounted on the wall. That comes down first. The foreman raised an eyebrow at the massive screen. Nice TV. My $2,500 bonus from last March, I said, tapping the receipt in my binder. The paper was crisp, preserved in a plastic sleeve. The bracket stays. It came with the house. The men worked with practiced efficiency. One disconnected cables while two others carefully unmounted the TV. In less than 10 minutes, they were wrapping it in protective blankets. I moved through the house like a general conducting an inspection, binder open, pointing out each item. This wasn't an emotional rampage. It was inventory management. The washer and dryer in the laundry room, I said, leading them down the hall. I bought them after Sloan complained the old ones were gross. I remembered her exact words. God, Krista, these machines are from the Stone Age. Can't we get something that doesn't look like it belongs in a gas station bathroom? In the kitchen, the foreman whistled at the massive stainless steel refrigerator. 4-door smart fridge. That's going to be tricky. It's empty, I assured him. I threw out everything perishable last night and packed the rest in coolers. Already disconnected the water line. They removed the refrigerator with careful precision, leaving a gaping hole in the custom cabinetry. The $900 espresso machine was next. I watched as they wrapped it, remembering how Corbin and Sloan would use it every morning, leaving their empty cups scattered around the house. Not once in 3 years had either of them bought coffee beans. That was always my job, like everything else. Wi-Fi router and mesh system, I said, pointing to the sleek devices mounted throughout the house. All 4 nodes, the ones that powered Corbin's endless job searches and Sloan's Instagram empire. Room by room, the house emptied of everything that was mine. The movers worked quickly, professionally, asking few questions. I answered the ones they did ask with calm precision. No, that stays. Yes, that goes. Careful with that. It's fragile. By noon, the truck was half full, and the house already felt different. Hollower, lighter. With each item that left, a weight lifted from my shoulders. "Taking a break for lunch, ma'am," the foreman told me. I nodded and walked through the quieter house while they ate in their truck. My footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors now that the area rugs, also mine, were gone. In the living room, the wall looked naked without the TV. In the kitchen, the refrigerator's absence revealed years of dust and a single magnet that had fallen behind it. A Hawaiian sunset from some previous family vacation I hadn't been invited to. This isn't destruction, I reminded myself. This is reclamation. By 4 in the afternoon, they'd loaded everything that was mine. I stood in the driveway, signing the paperwork as they secured the truck. "Address for delivery?" the foreman asked. I gave him the information for my new studio apartment. The lease had started yesterday, paid 3 months in advance. After they left, I returned to the house. The emptiness was jarring but satisfying. I pulled out my phone and started recording, walking from room to room, documenting the condition of the property. No damage to the walls where the TV had hung. No scratches on the floors where furniture had slid out. No dents in the door frames. Evidence, just in case. In the kitchen, I opened cabinets that now held only the mismatched mugs and cheap plates my parents had owned before I started upgrading things. The pantry contained just the basics. My father's sugary cereals, my mother's diet crackers, the cheap coffee no one actually drank. Upstairs, I entered what had been my bedroom. The bed frame remained, but the premium mattress I'd bought last year was gone, leaving just the cheap box spring that came with the house. My dresser was gone. My bookshelf was gone. I sat cross-legged on the floor, opened my laptop, and began making calls. First, the power company. "Yes, I need to cancel service at 1342 Oakwood Lane. The account is under Krista Kessler." "May I ask why you're canceling, Miss Kessler?" the representative asked. "I'm moving." Simple, truthful. I see. There will be a final reading tomorrow and service will be disconnected by 5 p.m. Is there a forwarding address for the final bill? I provided my new address, then made the same call to the water company. Then the internet service provider that powered the whole smart home system. Each call took less than 10 minutes. Each representative was professionally indifferent to my decision. By 6 p.m., I'd made all the calls. Every utility would be shut off within 48 hours before my family returned from their Hawaiian paradise. Night fell. The house was dark except for the single lamp I'd left plugged in my room. I showered in the now empty bathroom, dried myself with the one towel I'd kept out of my luggage, and slept on a blanket on the floor of my old bedroom. In the morning, I loaded my remaining bags into my car. I'd left nothing behind that was truly mine. In the kitchen, I placed my house keys on the counter. Beside them, I stacked the new, unpaid utility bills I'd collected from the mailbox yesterday. All addressed to Mark and Brenda Kessler. All services they'd enjoyed without thought because I'd handled them. I took one last look around the empty house. 6 years of my life. $2,000 a month. $144,000. I locked the door from the inside, stepped out, and pulled it shut behind me with a satisfying click. In my car, I checked the time. 6 days until they returned from Maui. 6 days until they discovered what responsibility actually costs. Tick-tock, I whispered as I drove away, heading toward my new, much smaller, infinitely more peaceful home. 6 days later, I was sitting in my new studio apartment when my phone buzzed with a notification from the Ring doorbell app. The one I'd deliberately never deleted. A final loose end I'd left untied on purpose. The app showed the Kesslers returning home, dragging oversized suitcases up the front walk. Their faces were tanned, their shoulders slumped with travel fatigue. My mom clutched a pineapple-shaped souvenir. My dad fumbled with his keys. Sloan and Corbin trailed behind in matching Aloha shirts. Rhett brought up the rear, still wearing a plastic lei around his neck. I took a sip of my coffee, turned up the volume on my phone, and watched. "Honey," my mom called as my dad finally got the door open. "Don't forget the light switch is finicky." They disappeared inside. I counted down in my head. 3, 2, 1. "Mark?" My mom's voice filtered through the Ring's microphone, confused. "The lights aren't working." "Hang on," my dad replied, his voice growing fainter. "Let me check the breaker." A minute passed. The door remained open, spilling their conversation onto the porch, where the camera captured every word. "Nothing's working," my dad called back. "The power's out." "Did you forget to pay the bill?" my mom asked, irritation creeping into her voice. "Me? You handle the utilities." I smiled, imagining them standing in the dark hallway, jet-lagged and confused. Corbin pushed past them, phone flashlight activated. His beam swept across the living room, then stopped abruptly. "Dad?" His voice rose an octave. "Where's the TV?" The flashlight beam jerked around wildly now, illuminating empty spaces where furniture used to be. "What the hell?" My dad's heavy footsteps pounded across the floor. Sloan screamed from the kitchen. "The fridge is gone. Everything's gone." I watched as they spilled back onto the front porch, faces pale in the dying November sunlight. My mom's hands shook as she clutched at my dad's sleeve. "Someone broke in," she gasped. "Call 911." My dad fumbled his phone from his pocket, fingers trembling as he dialed. I watched his face contort as he explained the situation to the dispatcher, describing a robbery that had somehow cleaned out their entire house. Corbin paced the porch, his own phone gripped tightly. His brow furrowed as something occurred to him. "The Ring camera," he said suddenly. "We can check the footage." Of course Corbin would think of that. The tech guy who couldn't even launch a successful startup with $50,000 of funding. I took another sip of my coffee as I watched him tap at his phone, accessing the same app I was currently using. I knew the exact moment he found the footage from 3 days ago. His face drained of color, mouth dropping open. She took everything," he stammered. The others crowded around his phone. I could picture the video playing on his screen. Me, clipboard in hand, directing the movers as they carefully loaded the 80-inch TV, the smart fridge, the washer and dryer, the espresso machine. All documented, all organized, all mine. "Krista did this." My mom's voice broke on my name. "But why would she?" "Because she's crazy," Sloan cut in. "I told you she was getting weird." My dad took the phone from Corbin, watching the footage with narrowing eyes. When he looked up, his face was rigid with fury. "She can't do this," he growled. "This is our house." I set my phone down on the coffee table and walked to the window. Outside, the November sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. My studio was small, but the light here was beautiful. Clean. Mine. My phone started buzzing again. Not the Ring app this time, actual calls, one after another. The same numbers over and over. No contact names attached. I picked it up and looked at the screen. 52 missed calls in the span of 10 minutes. Then the texts started flowing in from my mother's number. "Krista, call me. Where are you?" The house was robbed. I set the phone face down on the table and made myself a fresh cup of coffee. The buzzing continued, persistent as a trapped wasp. As I moved around my small kitchen, I took my time, measuring the grounds with precision, waiting for the water to reach the perfect temperature. When I returned to the window with my steaming cup, a police car was pulling up in front of my building. Behind it, my father's sedan screeched to a halt, double parking in his haste. They piled out, Mark, Brenda, Corbin, Sloan, and Rhett. A gesticulating mass of righteous indignation as they followed 2 officers into my building. My intercom buzzed 3 minutes later. "Miss Kessler?" The front desk attendant's voice was professionally neutral. "There are police officers here asking to speak with you. They say your family is with them." I took a long, slow breath, savoring the moment. 6 years of paying for a house that was never mine. 6 years of being the invisible pillar, the responsible one, the family ATM. 6 years of swallowing my resentment as they took and took and took. The moment had arrived. The trap I'd set had sprung perfectly. "Ma'am," the attendant prompted when I didn't immediately respond. "The police are here with your family." I set my coffee cup down and crossed to my desk. My hand came to rest on the 3-inch binder filled with receipts, warranties, and bank statements. 6 years of meticulous documentation. 6 years of evidence. "Tell the officers, only the officers, they can come up," I replied. I picked up the binder, feeling its reassuring weight in my hands. I didn't rush. This moment belonged to me. The knock came at exactly 4:17 p.m., 2 sharp raps, official and unyielding. "Ma'am, your family downstairs is claiming you've stolen their television and appliances," The officer's voice was neutral, professional. He was young, maybe 30, with close cropped hair and a name tag reading Officer Brennan. His partner, older with salt and pepper hair, stood slightly behind, watching my face for a reaction. I didn't give him one. "Please, come in," I said, stepping back from the door. "I have coffee." The studio was small but immaculate. My 80-inch TV dominated one wall. The espresso machine gleamed on the counter. Everything I'd taken, everything that was mine, fit perfectly in this space. I'd been waiting for this moment for 9 days. "Black or cream?" I asked, pouring from the carafe. "Black." "Thank you," Officer Brennan said, his eyes scanning the apartment. I handed him the mug, then reached for my 3-inch binder sitting ready on the counter. The weight of it was reassuring in my hands. 6 years of meticulous documentation, 6 years of receipts, bank statements, and warranties, all organized by date, item, and payment method. "This should clarify things," I said, handing him the binder. Officer Brennan took it, balancing his coffee in one hand. He flipped it open, his expression unchanging as he turned the plastic-protected pages. He paused at the invoice for the TV. "This is the television they're referring to? The 80-inch 4K? "Yes," I replied. "Purchased with my year-end bonus, $2,500 plus tax." He nodded, flipping more pages. His finger traced down a highlighted bank statement, then stopped at a warranty card with my name printed clearly on it. He found the bill of sale for the fridge, paused at the washer and dryer documentation, raised an eyebrow at the espresso machine receipt. The older officer leaned in, murmuring something I couldn't hear. Officer Brennan nodded, then closed the binder. "Everything appears to be in your name, Miss Kessler," he said, handing it back. His eyes met mine, and I saw something shift there, a reassessment. "Ma'am, do you want us to file a harassment report on your behalf?" The question hung in the air between us. 6 years of silent contribution. 6 years of being the responsible one, the ATM. 6 years of watching Corbin waste $50,000 on a startup that never started. 6 years of Sloan's private college tuition being paid without question, while I covered mortgage payments that should have been my parents' responsibility. "No," I said finally. "That won't be necessary." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "We'll take care of it. Thank you for the coffee." I didn't follow them to the door. I didn't need to watch what happens next. Through my open window, I heard the commotion 3 floors down. My father's voice rising in indignation, my mother's tearful protests. "It's a civil matter." Officer Brennan's voice carried up clearly. "She has provided documentation of ownership for all items in question. You need to leave the property now or be cited for trespassing." Silence followed. Then the slam of car doors. I closed my window. 3 weeks later, I was pushing my cart through the produce section of Greenway Market when I spotted them. Corbin and Sloan huddled near the organic apples, scanning the store, waiting for me. I considered abandoning my half-filled cart, but something that had hardened inside me weeks ago hadn't softened. I pushed forward. Sloan spotted me first, her eyes narrowing. At 22, she looked older suddenly, the privilege and certainty drained from her face. "This isn't funny, Krista," she hissed as I reached for a bag of Honeycrisp apples. "Mom is crying every day. You need to fix this." I placed the apples in my cart, moving past her without response. Corbin stepped into my path. His usually perfect hair was uncombed, his designer shirt wrinkled. "Just turn the internet back on," he said, desperation edging his voice. "How am I supposed to apply for jobs? You've gone too far." I looked at my 28-year-old brother, really looked at him. The failed entrepreneur, the eternal student, the perpetual child. "You're 28, Corbin," I said, the words falling like stones between us. "Get your own Wi-Fi." I pushed my cart past them, their protests fading behind me. The weight of the binder wasn't in my hands anymore, but I felt lighter all the same. 2 months later, a manila envelope arrived at my door. Inside, a summons to small claims court. They were suing me for $5,000 in emotional damages and stolen property. My mother's signature on the complaint form was shaky but determined. They'd tried everything else. This was their last stand. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead. My parents sat across the aisle, not looking at me. Corbin and Sloan weren't there. Perhaps they couldn't be bothered to wake up in time for the 9 a.m. hearing. "Kessler versus Kessler," the clerk called. We approached the bench. My father spoke first, delivering a carefully rehearsed speech about family obligations and property rights. He mentioned the house, their house, and how I'd abandoned them without warning. He talked about the difficulties they'd faced without proper appliances, about the emotional toll, about my theft of family items. When he finished, the judge turned to me. "And your response, Miss Kessler?" I didn't speak. Instead, I placed my 3-inch binder on his desk. The sound it made was final, definitive. He opened it, frowning slightly at first, then with increasing interest as he turned the pages. 5 minutes passed in silence as he reviewed bank statements, receipts, utility bills in my name. "Mr. Kessler," he said finally, closing the binder, "these items appear to be legally purchased and owned by your daughter. Furthermore, I see evidence here that she contributed $2,000 monthly toward your mortgage for 6 years while living in your home. Is that correct?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "Well, yes, but—" "And you're claiming she stole property that she herself purchased?" "It was for the family," my mother interjected. "She can't just take it." The judge's expression hardened. "Mrs. Kessler, I suggest you not speak out of turn." He turned back to my father. "This case is dismissed. And Mr. Kessler, I would caution you about bringing frivolous claims to this court. There are penalties for perjury." The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the small courtroom. My parents didn't look at me as they left. I gathered my binder and walked out alone into the cold air. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. 4 months later, I was sitting on the small balcony of my studio apartment. The air was cold against my skin, but I didn't mind. I wrapped my fingers around a steaming mug of coffee, the expensive kind Corbin used to drain from my machine without ever buying a replacement bag. My apartment wasn't much. 400 square feet that would fit inside the Kessler family living room with space to spare. But every inch of it was mine. Every utility bill had only my name on it. The silence here wasn't the hollow absence of people who should be present. It was peace, earned and protected. Uncle Dean had called last week. He'd waited until he knew I'd be home from work, his voice careful when I answered. "The house is gone," he said without preamble. "Foreclosed after 3 months. They couldn't make the payments." I took a sip of coffee, letting the information settle. "Where are they living now?" Two-bedroom rental across town. Mark and Brenda took the master. Rhett's on the couch. Sloan and Corbin are sharing the second bedroom. He paused. Sloan had to leave Westlake. She's at community college now. Westlake University. $45,000 a year in tuition alone. Sorority dues on top of that. All while, I'd quietly transferred $2,000 to my parents' account every month for 6 years. Krista, they're really struggling, Uncle Dean said, his voice dropping into that guilt-inducing register families perfect over generations. Did they ask you to call me? Not exactly, but... Then they're not struggling enough, I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. They'll figure it out. They're adults. The consequences had arrived like dominoes falling. The two-bedroom apartment, Sloan's transfer, my father having to find an actual full-time job for the first time in 15 years, my mother selling her jewelry on Facebook Marketplace. Reality, crashing down on people who thought they could fly forever on someone else's wings. I took another sip of coffee, watching the sun climb higher. My phone buzzed with a notification. LinkedIn. I tapped the screen. Corbin Kessler has sent you a message. I opened it with mild curiosity. Hey sis, hope you're doing well. Listen, I've got an interview at Meridian Tech next week. Any chance you could be a reference? You know how reliable I am when I put my mind to something. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. 28 years old, and still convinced the world owed him a cushioned landing. I clicked ignore, then blocked his profile for good measure. 4 months ago, I'd woken up in a cold, silent house, abandoned by the people who should have been there. I remembered standing in that kitchen, the moment everything crystallized. The soft click of realization, like a lock turning. Now I sat in my own space, smaller but infinitely more honest. My bills were reasonable because I only paid for what I needed. My shelves held books I actually read. My refrigerator contained food only I ate. People asked if I ever felt guilty. Former co-workers who'd heard through the grapevine. The few friends who knew the whole story. They wanted to know if I wondered whether I'd gone too far, if I thought about my family struggling in their cramped apartment while I sat here with my expensive coffee maker and my quiet mornings. I took a final sip, letting the rich flavor linger on my tongue. No, I didn't. For the first time in my life, the silence was actually mine. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.